Welcome to the DIY3DTech.com channel.
Welcome to this episode of DIY3DTech.com. In this episode, I wanted to focus a little bit on the upgrade of the TwoUp to a Bowden extruder and talk a little bit about it. I want to start a little bit with the hot end, as I've covered out a little bit on the extruder side earlier. So basically this hot end is a remix of several different pieces from Thingiverse. A carrier here because it is a E3D V5 hot end that we have here mounted to a rail setup. So I decided to do it this way instead of just trying to bolt the two on, as it seemed to be a little bit more cumbersome, and why not make it one unit. One of the things in printing this, if you're going to print it, I printed this on my DaVinci and ABS with thick shells, because basically on the DaVinci, especially the Duo, you basically have thin, normal, or thick shell, so you have the choice of three. This is the thick shell, 0.2 layer height and 40% infill. So this is actually very sturdy. I printed several other ones in the mix, and none of them sort of came out as good as this one. So I have a couple here that I did print out, and some of them were, again, prototypes. One of the big pieces that I did discover, and after printing all these different versions, is I had to bring the head down a little bit around this particular mounting piece down. You see this one's actually kind of fancy, but it sits too high. The hot end couldn't come down to the bed close enough. So again, made that modification. Is a little bit of trial and error. The other piece, at its lowest setting, the corner of this fan does hit this housing, so it can't move over as far as possible. So I do lose some X distance. One of the things I plan on doing is remixing this housing, moving this fan, tucking it back in a little bit more, because if you can see down here at the bottom, the way that this mechanism is set up, it really doesn't do a very good job of cooling the plastic, etc. So I am going to snip this off and tuck this back in a future Thingiverse build, and then basically that should give back the X travel that I've lost, because I can only make it about here before this fan hits at its lowest setting down here. I could have pushed it over a little bit, but one of the things you notice that there's still this opening on this side. This is for servo to do auto bed leveling or trimming. I'm going to add this, have ordered a servo to go in here, and I'll wire that up. There is on the far side of the board, you probably can't see it way back here. I'll cover this out in another episode, how I mounted the electronics, but input for a servo and bed leveling on the TwoUp's ramp board. So we'll add this in the very near future, because I think that's important. So again, tuck the fan in. Now, one of the pieces, you notice this little cooling fan came with the E3D V5 hot end. You really need to make sure that this fan is running all the time, because one of the things I have noticed in running this hot end, even though that there is hot end stopgap in here and fins, it still does get this plastic very warm. It is mounted both front and back with the ABS plastic. To be honest with you, I'm not sure that this would really work printed in PLA, because it does get rather warm. It does work in ABS because it resists the heat. This fan keeps it cool enough, so it does work. But again, I'm not sure about the whole PLA piece. Also, mounting this, I think, as many have found, if you're using this back bearing carrier, you really have to clean up where the teeth come in and mount back here to it, but that works good. Now, one of the things, I'm going to pan up a little bit. You see I mounted the extruder up here. I did make a base plate for it to mount up here, so very firm. Don't know if you can see, pan up a little bit further. So you see the spool mechanism up here, which I built, which feeds the filament directly in, and the filament feeds down around into the extruder. The extruder comes up. I should say the hot end from the extruder feeds down here to the hot end. So it's kind of a pretty straight path. and the flexible tubing basically just goes back and forth with the hot end head. So a pretty short path for the filament, which is good. So this all seems to work fine. The one thing I did do is I did spring, went on eBay for around 30 bucks, got an aluminum extruder, which I think is very worthwhile. I printed several off. I think it was a waste of plastic, printing off my own extruder. You know, again, it's not that complex. I showed the building of this, so you can go back and watch the other videos. It's a pretty simple concept, and it's a pretty simple concept. It would make sense that it would work in plastic because the metal bearing is holding it against there. However, the tensioning and everything else just does not work as good as a metal one. So again, for 30 bucks, highly suggest going off and getting the metal version of this and implementing it. A whole lot better deal. So anyways, hope this works out for you. If you're interested in converting it, again, this is up on Thingiverse. Look for a future mix of the fan piece. Again, make sure you wire in this fan. Now, what I did is I wired this into the all hot on the board in the back, because there's two 12-volt power leads that come in. So I just picked the furthest one, added in there, so it runs whenever there's power to the printer. This is running just to be on the safe side, so there's no meltdown or anything of it. So again, I'd make the recommendation to do that. So hopefully this video was helpful, and if so, please hit like below and subscribe to my channel. Cheers.